As Judy Garland lay weak and fragile in her London home, just days before her tragic passing in 1969, she made a chilling confession to a close friend. "They wanted Dorothy, but they destroyed Judy," she whispered, her once vibrant eyes filled with sorrow. "The Hollywood machine had controlled her since childhood, pushing her into an endless cycle of diet pills, stimulants, and grueling work schedules. I never lived for myself," she admitted, her voice cracking under the weight of years of pain. Despite being adored by millions, Garland was tormented by self-doubt and loneliness. She confessed that MGM had manipulated her so deeply that she never truly felt beautiful or loved. "They told me I was too fat, too plain. They made me believe I was nothing without them," she revealed. Decades of addiction and financial ruin had left her exhausted. "All I wanted was a little happiness," she sighed. But Hollywood had chewed her up and spat her out, leaving her broken. Judy Garland's death at just 47 years old was ruled an overdose, but in truth, she had been dying for years, one heartbreak at a time. In the final days before his mysterious death in 1959, George Reeves, forever remembered as TV's Superman, shared a chilling confession with a close friend. "I'll always be Superman to them, but I feel like a ghost in my own life," he admitted, bitterness lacing his words. Hollywood had typecast him, trapping him in a role he had come to despise. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't escape the shadow of the Man of Steel. Reeves had struggled to find meaningful work after Adventures of Superman ended, and behind the heroic smile, he battled deep depression. He confessed that the industry had turned its back on him, leaving him financially and emotionally drained. "They built me up, then forgot I existed," he lamented. His relationship with socialite Tony Mannix had soured, and his engagement to another woman only complicated things. He feared he was being watched, manipulated, trapped in a dangerous game he couldn't win. On June 16, 1959, Reeves was found dead from a gunshot wound. Officially ruled a suicide, rumors of foul play persist to this day. Was it truly despair that drove him to pull the trigger, or was there a darker force at play? His confession suggests we may never know the full truth. As Tallulah Bankhead lay weak and fading in her final days of 1968, the once glamorous Hollywood rebel made a chilling confession. "I spent my life chasing pleasure, but in the end, it all feels so empty," she admitted, her raspy voice barely above a whisper. Known for her wild parties, sharp wit, and defiant attitude, Bankhead had always lived life on her own terms. But beneath the fearless persona, there was a woman haunted by loneliness and regret. Hollywood had adored her, but it had also used her. She confessed that she had burned too many bridges, alienating people who once loved her. "I laughed at rules, at convention, but now, I wonder if I ever truly let anyone love me," she mused. Decades of reckless behavior, drinking, drugs, and scandalous affairs had taken their toll. "They called me shocking, but I was just trying to feel something real," she admitted with a sad smile. In the end, Bankhead's body had given up long before her spirit did. As she drew her final breaths, she whispered one last defiant phrase: "Codeine bourbon." A fitting farewell for a woman who had lived and died on her own terms. In the final days before her death in 1977, Joan Crawford, one of Hollywood's most iconic and controversial stars, made a chilling confession. "They loved the illusion, but they never loved me," she admitted, her once commanding voice now weak with age and illness. For decades, she had cultivated the image of perfection, the glamorous movie star, the devoted mother, the ultimate survivor. But behind closed doors, she carried a lifetime of pain, betrayal, and regret. She confessed that fame had cost her everything: true love, happiness, even her own children's affection. "I gave them everything," she murmured, "but it was never enough." The release of Mommy Dearest, the scathing memoir by her adopted daughter, haunted her. "I tried to make them strong. Maybe I was too hard," she admitted. But the world would remember her not for her Oscar-winning performances, but for the image of a cruel, abusive mother. As she lay in bed, too weak to rise, a nurse attempted to pray for her. Crawford's last words were sharp and defiant. "Don't you dare ask God to help me." In that moment, the Ice Queen of Hollywood faced death the same way she had faced life, on her own terms, with fire in her eyes. In the hours before her tragic death in 1944, Lupe Velez, once Hollywood's fiery and glamorous Mexican Spitfire, made a heartbreaking confession. "I gave them laughter, but no one saw my tears," she whispered to a close friend. Beneath the bold, passionate persona was a woman tormented by heartbreak, scandal, and the crushing weight of Hollywood's judgment. After a successful career in silent films and early talkies, Velez found herself fading from the limelight. Her relationships, especially with actor Gary Cooper, had been passionate but destructive. Now she was unmarried, pregnant, and terrified of the disgrace that would follow. "They love me when I make them laugh," she admitted. "But where are they now?" Abandoned by the industry that once adored her, she felt trapped with no way out. Determined to leave life on her own terms, Velez planned an elegant farewell, dressing in silk pajamas, decorating her bedroom with flowers, and taking a fatal dose of Seconal. But death was not as glamorous as she had imagined. Some accounts claim she ran to the bathroom, violently ill, before collapsing. Her final confession revealed a truth Hollywood so often hides. Even the brightest stars can die in darkness. In the final years of her life, Marlene Dietrich lived in near-total isolation in her Paris apartment, refusing to be seen by the public. The glamorous star who once captivated the world with her androgynous beauty and husky voice was now a frail woman, haunted by the ghosts of her past. In a rare moment of vulnerability, she made a chilling confession to a close friend. "I spent my life seducing the world, but I never truly belonged anywhere." Dietrich had lived boldly, defying gender norms, taking lovers of both sexes, and even rejecting Hitler's attempts to lure her back to Nazi Germany. But despite her fame and fierce independence, she admitted to feeling a profound loneliness. "I built a myth, a fantasy, but Marlene Dietrich was never real," she whispered. Decades of glamour had come at a cost: estranged relationships, a troubled daughter, and a growing dependence on alcohol. "I wanted love, but I was afraid of it," she confessed. By the time she died in 1992, Dietrich had long retreated from the world, her once commanding presence reduced to a voice on the telephone. Her final confession revealed a tragic truth. Even the most iconic stars can fade into the shadows, longing for something they could never truly grasp. As Frances Farmer's life neared its end in 1970, the once brilliant actress, known for her rebellious spirit and tragic downfall, made a chilling confession. "They stole my life," she murmured, her voice filled with both anger and sorrow. Hollywood had once hailed her as a rising star, but when she refused to conform, they branded her as unstable. What followed was a nightmare: arrests, psychiatric institutions, and brutal treatments that stripped her of everything. Farmer had been forced into mental hospitals, where she was subjected to electroshock therapy and rumored lobotomies. "They locked me away like an animal," she whispered. "Not because I was mad, but because I wouldn't obey." Her beauty and talent had meant nothing in a system that crushed independent women. She confessed that, for years, she had dreamed of escape, not just from institutions, but from the industry that had destroyed her. "I wanted to be free," she sighed. But freedom was never mine to have. Though she briefly regained some stability, the damage had been done. In the end, Farmer's greatest tragedy wasn't madness. It was a world that refused to let her live on her own terms. And in her final days, she knew, Hollywood had broken her, but it had never truly tamed her. As Ingrid Bergman lay in her bed in 1982, weakened by the cancer that would soon take her life, she made a quiet yet heartbreaking confession. "I gave everything to my art, but love always came at a cost," she whispered. She had been one of Hollywood's most revered actresses, a luminous beauty with an undeniable talent. But behind the glamour, her life had been marked by scandal, heartbreak, and sacrifice. Her love affair with Italian director Roberto Rossellini had nearly destroyed her career. Branded as immoral and shunned by Hollywood for leaving her husband and child, she had fled to Europe, where she tried to rebuild her life. "They called me a sinner, a disgrace, but I only followed my heart," she admitted. Though she later found redemption and won back Hollywood's favor, she always carried the scars of the condemnation she once faced. "Fame gives you everything, except the freedom to live as you wish," she reflected. In her final days, she found solace in the knowledge that she had lived on her own terms. "I have no regrets," she whispered. Yet, in the quiet moments before the end, one question remained. Had she sacrificed too much for the love of cinema? In the final days of her life in 1973, Veronica Lake, once the dazzling femme fatale of Hollywood's golden age, made a heartbreaking confession. "They only loved my hair, never me," she murmured, her voice bitter yet resigned. Once adored for her signature peekaboo hairstyle and sultry screen presence, Lake had fallen from grace, abandoned by the industry that once worshipped her. She had once starred alongside Hollywood's biggest leading men, but behind the scenes, she struggled with alcoholism, failed marriages, and financial ruin. "They turned their backs on me the moment I stopped being useful," she admitted. By the 1950s, work had dried up, and Lake found herself penniless, bartending in a rundown New York hotel to survive. "Fame is a trick," she whispered. "It makes you believe you're untouchable until you're nothing." Despite her hardships, she never begged Hollywood to take her back. "I lived my life my way," she insisted. But as she lay dying from hepatitis and kidney failure, alone in a Vermont hospital, one question lingered. Had the price of independence been too high? In the end, Veronica Lake had been more than her hair, but Hollywood had never cared enough to see it. As Peter Lorre lay weak and frail in 1964, the once iconic actor known for his chilling performances in M and Casablanca made a final, sorrowful confession. "They made me a villain, and I never escaped," he whispered, his voice tinged with regret. For decades, Hollywood had cast him as sinister masterminds and eerie misfits, never allowing him to be anything more. Lorre had fled Nazi Germany in the 1930s, seeking safety in Hollywood, but soon found himself typecast. "No matter what I did, I was always the creep, the killer, the outcast," he admitted. The constant rejection for serious roles ate away at him. Even when he brought depth and humanity to his villains, the industry never let him break free. "They laughed at my voice, my face, but they never saw my soul," he sighed. Addiction to morphine, financial struggles, and personal betrayals had worn him down. By the end, Lorre was nearly forgotten by the industry he had helped shape. As his health failed, he made one final request: "Don't let them bury me as a monster." But Hollywood never let go of its illusions, and Peter Lorre remained forever trapped in the shadows he had once so brilliantly portrayed. In the twilight of her life, Loretta Young, the elegant and devout actress who had carefully maintained a wholesome image, made a quiet yet heartbreaking confession. "I spent my life hiding the truth," she whispered to a close confidant. For decades, she had been one of Hollywood's most respected leading ladies, known for her beauty, grace, and deep Catholic faith. But behind the perfect smile, there was a painful secret she had carried for most of her life. In 1935, Young had an affair with Clark Gable, her Call of the Wild co-star. When she became pregnant, she feared for her reputation and career. Hollywood's moral code would never allow an unmarried woman, especially one known for her religious beliefs, to have a child out of wedlock. Desperate to protect herself, she staged an elaborate cover-up, secretly giving birth and later adopting her own daughter, Judy. "I thought I was doing what was right," she admitted in later years, "but I was really just afraid." It wasn't until decades later that Young finally acknowledged the truth, that Judy Lewis was her biological daughter. But by then, years of deception had caused deep wounds. "I should have told her sooner," she sighed. Though she found peace in her faith, her final confession revealed the burden of a secret that had shaped and haunted her entire life.